I'm Dr. Mark Goulston, and today I'm the face of America. I dropped out of medical school twice and finished. And I dropped out because I think I had untreated depression. And the first time I dropped out, my mind just wasn't working. I took a year off and I worked in blue-collar jobs, which I still remember fondly because life was so simple then. And then I came back to medical school and my mind stopped working again. And at that point, the medical school wanted to kick me out because when someone takes a leave of absence or drops out of medical school, the medical school loses matching funds. So I met with the dean of the school, and the dean of the school is in charge of funding the school. And I don't remember much about the meeting, but I think what happened is he thought, you know, he dropped out once from medical school. He was probably depressed, and he's dropping out again. He's probably more depressed, and we have to get rid of him because he's costing us money, but I don't want him to kill himself. I think that's what his thinking was. And so he handed me over to the dean of students, and the dean of students cares about students. And I was pretty low. And prior to this time in my life, I dealt with things by being sarcastic and cynical and biting, and it was all a cover-up. But I was too far gone to have that kind of cover-up. And I met with the dean of students, who showed me a letter from the other dean, and the letter said that the other dean had met with me and suggested an alternate career, and he was going to advise the promotions committee that I be asked to withdraw because I was passing everything. And when I read the letter, I asked the dean of students, what does this mean? And he had an Irish Catholic Boston accent, and he said, Mark, you've been kicked out. And it just hit me like a gunshot. I remember he said that to me and I went, and my eyes and cheeks started to tear up. And I actually thought I was bleeding. So this almost gets like a resurrection kind of quality. And I remember looking at my hands like this. And of course it wasn't blood, it was tears. And I came from a background where you're only worth what you produce in the world. And I didn't feel I could produce much, so I probably didn't feel like I was worth much. And so at that point, he says to me, Mark, you didn't screw up because you're passing everything, but you are screwed up. But if you got unscrewed up, I think this school would be glad they gave you another chance. And I didn't know what to make of his kindness and his compassion, except I started really crying and I was embarrassed. And then he said this to me. So imagine if you come from a background where you're only worth what you can do in life, and you hear something like this, and you don't think you're capable of doing anything. And the next thing he said is, he said, Mark, even if you don't become even a doctor, even if you don't come back to medical school, even if you don't do another thing the rest of your life, I'd be proud to know you. And that just, wow. And he said, I'd be proud to know you because you have a streak of goodness in you that we don't grade in medical school. And you don't know how much the world needs that goodness. And I am just tearing because I felt I had no future, no value, no worth. And he said, and you don't know how much the world needs that goodness. And you won't know it till you're 35, but you have to make it till you're 35. And you deserve to be on this planet. And you're going to let me help you. I think if he had said to me, if I can be of help, just give me a call, I probably be too proud. I probably would have said, oh, I'll be fine. And I probably would have gone back to my apartment, and I'm not sure if I would be alive. But what happened is I fell apart, and and I've come to see him as an angel. I fell apart, and just at the point where I would have really come unglued, he put his loving hand underneath. And when he said, "You're going to let me help you," he set up an appeal to the promotions committee, and he was the lowest ranking member. He wasn't even a medical doctor, and he appealed my case. And he appealed that there's something about this young man. He's got goodness, he cares. We got to give him another chance. And so when you're feeling low, when you're feeling worthless, when you're feeling useless, when you're feeling it's pointless to go on, and you don't think there's a future for you, you don't think you have any value, and you can't stand up for yourself, and someone steps in and sees things in you that you can't see, sees a future for you that you can't see, and goes to bat for you at their own inconvenience. I mean, he put himself out on a limb to go to bat for me against the whole medical school. It changed everything. I recently spoke to a serial entrepreneur named Jason Reed. You can catch his TEDx talk, and it's the most important conversation you can have with your teenager. Last year, his 14-year-old son hung himself. Changed his life. And he realized that he was not connecting, not reaching that son. And Jay shared this insight about entrepreneurs. He said, entrepreneurs don't get depressed after their businesses fail. He said, entrepreneurs by nature are already depressed people. They're bipolar. When they're on a roll, everything is great and they're building their businesses, but then when things crash, there's the dark side of being bipolar. And he says, such individuals who are not hireable by other people, I mean, they just can't work for other people. So during those days of their life, when you're not happy not working out elsewhere, people are saying, there's many people trying to talk you out of these entrepreneurial things. They'll say, what are you thinking about? Why don't you just get a regular job? So you're not a happy person not being able to really work for other people because you're an entrepreneur. And when you're in the downside, it's awful. So I think Jay had a great insight about entrepreneurs, that by nature, they are either depressed or on the high side, and they run into their entrepreneurial businesses to get away from the depression. And when he told me that, it's like a light bulb went off. And I think many entrepreneurs would relate to that. Part of the reason I'm coming out to be committed to my current work is I was a suicide prevention specialist for 25 years, and none of my patients killed themselves. And my main, and maybe my sole tool, was empathy. And it was what I call targeted interventional empathy. Targeted interventional empathy goes in and it literally touches the pain. And that person feels less alone in the pain. In Stay Alive, we have 8 episodes. In the 7th episode, and you can get all of them separately at youtube.com/Stay Alive video. And in the 7th episode, I talk about the 7 words as an example of targeted interventional empathy. And this is something, if you're listening, you can do this with your adolescent, you can do this with your spouse, you can do it with that person in your life who you know is in a down place and they're upset, and you try to talk to them and they say, I'm fine, I don't want to talk about it. Talking won't do anything, leave me alone. And so human nature is to back off and say, okay, I'm happy to talk to you when you want to talk to you. If there's anything I can do, tell me. But they're so upset, and inside they know they need to talk to you, but they don't want to talk to you because they don't think it'll help. So the way the 7 words work is an example of targeted interventional empathy, and it goes like this. Okay, I know you don't want to talk about it, but 7 words. And they're going to look at you like, 7 words? What the F? But they're re-engaged. What do you mean 7 words? So they said they didn't want to talk about it, but they're engaged with you. And you look them straight in the eye like I'm looking into the camera. and you lean in and you say this to them. 7 words: hurt, afraid, angry, ashamed, alone, lonely, tired. Pick one. And when we do this in Stay Alive, in the documentary, Kevin Hines, the jumper, he does what a lot of depressed people will do. He cocked his head and he smiled. When I said pick one, he said, all of them. But then you're in. See, they're not alone, you're in. And then you want to keep pulling that pain out, just like you're pulling pus out of an abscess. And you say, pick one. And they might say, angry. Okay, take me to a time when you were the most angry and you didn't know what to do with it. Maybe it was 2:30 in the morning. Maybe you were walking around your bedroom and you were hitting the pillow, or maybe wanting to put your fist through the wall. But take me back to that moment. And they will start to talk. And as they start to talk, an interesting thing happens, because they're talking about a time that they felt awful all along. But as they tell you the details of when they felt their angriest, and you're not there giving them solutions, you're draining the pus out of them, they feel less alone. And as they feel less alone, what happens is they start to cry. And it's good that they start to cry, because what's happening is they're feeling relief. And as they feel relief, you want to keep pulling it out of them. So, and you ask questions such as, at its worst, what was that like? What did it make you want to do? That was a close call.